Looking for a soft and slouchy sling that will keep your essentials close and your hands free? Hi sewing friends, I'm Stephanie and this is Ashtown Creations. Today we are making the Jack Sling Pack by Creations, more specifically this one. The pattern comes in 3 sizes, all of which are constructed the same. Right here we have the medium, which is large enough for it to hold a regular sized iPad or tablet. It comes with an internal slip pocket and a slip pocket on the back. Here we have a very cute small, which might hold a mini iPad or tablet or a Kindle. And over here we have an adorable mini that will definitely hold a cell phone as well as other essentials. They all have the same features, a beautiful structure, an adjustable strap, and a modern practical design that makes it such a satisfying sew. I'll be walking you through the whole process step by step. But before I do, don't forget to hit that like button, subscribe for more bag making tutorials, share this video with your sewing friends. It really does help to support this channel. I would also love to hear from you in the comments. Let me know which size you are planning on making first. In the description box, I will link the pattern, any materials that I have used that I can find, and I will also include timestamps so you can jump to whatever section you want. I want to say thank you to Tara from Creations for allowing me to record this tutorial and share it with all of you. So grab your pattern, your favorite fabrics, and let's get sewing. All right, let's go through the pieces for the Jack Sling Pack, the small version. Up here I have my main panel. So on the front I have decided that I'm going to use a cotton canvas. I have interfaced it with a woven interfacing and Decaville light. The pattern calls for foam, but I prefer to use woven interfacing and Decaville light. So I have one of those for the front, and then 2 cut out of an Ottertex waterproof canvas for the lining. I have my zipper flanges. You need to make sure that you have them mirrored. So you want to have, I have 2 for the exterior and 2 for the lining. Down here I have my slip pocket. I have just cut it out of a cotton canvas. I have not interfaced it. It should be fine the way it is. This is my zipper gusset. I have 1 out of Morofaux leather and 1 out of my Ottertex waterproof canvas. This is the base, exterior Morofaux leather, and the lining Ottertex waterproof canvas. I have 2 strap anchors. I have cut these out of the Morofaux leather. The medium size bag I used webbing. So you can use webbing, but you can also make your strap anchors. This is the sling strap. This goes at the top. It's what the webbing will come out from. I have 2 pieces cut out of the Morofaux leather. Up here I have my back top. It's just 1 piece out of Morofaux leather. This is the back bottom, 1 piece out of Morofaux leather. And then the back lining for this ends up being a slip pocket. So these are on the outside and these are the lining for the back slip pocket. I have my number 5 zipper. I have chosen to go with a gold colored hardware. So I have gold teeth, 2 zipper sliders. So I have my 1-inch webbing and I have 1-inch triangle rings. I've actually cut these to be 1 inch. The pattern calls for 3/4 of an inch, but I have made mine 1 inch because I have my 1-inch triangle ring. So I have a 1-inch swivel hook, 1-inch strap slider, and my Ashtown Creations cork label. So that looks like everything. Let's get sewing this bag. We are going to be working with the back pieces. So I've got the back top, the back bottom, and the 2 back lining pieces. I'm going to set 2 aside for now. We want to take, I've got the back bottom and 1 of the lining pieces, and I'm just going to put them right sides together along one of these short edges. Grab a couple clips, and now I'm going to stitch across with a 3.5 stitch length, back stitching at the beginning and the end of the seam, using the full seam allowance given in the pattern. Now we're going to take our piece and we are going to press the seam allowance towards the lining. So I've got my lining on top and I've got my seam allowance to the left, and I'm just going to fold the lining over the seam allowance, and I'm finger pressing. Now I'm going to change to a 5 stitch length, and I'm going to top stitch over top of the lining piece through all of the seam allowances. Do the same for the other 2 pieces. I have gone ahead and marked a line on the back of my bottom piece. So this is the bottom, the top one's over here. So on the back of the bottom piece, I have marked down from the seam line according to the instructions. And we are now going to fold this piece over at that line. And I'm going to put a couple clips in it. All right, I put a couple clips along the edge just to keep it even. And now it's optional whether you want to top stitch this, but Mora is kind of puffy, so I want to top stitch it. So I'm just going to top stitch 1/8 of an inch away from the folded edge. All right, this is what we have. This is the top piece with the lining of the pocket, and this is the bottom piece that we just finished. We want to take these two pieces. I've got my top piece face up, and I'm going to put my bottom piece face up on top of it. I'm going to look at my seams here and try and nest them. I don't know if you can see that. I've got it nested so that it reduces bulk. I basically have them offset. So my fold for the top piece is lower than the fold for my bottom piece so that it just sits in there nicely. I'm going to grab some clips and I'm going to put some clips in it. Look at the other side, make sure I've got them nested the same. The other thing I'm going to do off camera is I'm going to make sure I've got it even. So I'm going to just clip, but I'll go off with the ruler and measure it to make sure I've got it even. And then we will baste the sides. And there we go. I'm now going to baste along the sides. I've got it on a 5-stitch length, and I'm going to start at the top on this one, and then I will flip it over and start at the top on this one, because we want to keep this line even, and we want to keep these spots where we place them. If I start from the bottom, I risk sliding it up. So I'll just go ahead and do this. And like I said, I'm going to flip it over. I'm going to start at the top up here so that I can keep the pocket level. Okay, so I took my main pattern piece, so the piece that we just finished, I took the main pattern piece and I lined it up with this edge. There's a line on it, and I lined the line up with that edge. It's a dotted line on the pattern. And then I drew around in silver marking pen. As per requested, I am not going to be showing pattern pieces on the screen, so I just explained what I did. All right, so I'm going to go around now, and with the line that I've drawn, I'm going to baste it around at about 1/8 of an inch away from the line I drew, all the way around the pattern piece. So the fabric is sliding a bit, so I'm just going to take out these stitches to try and allow it to slide properly and not end up with a bubble. I decided not to go all the way around because it doesn't really need, I don't really need to up here. It's only one layer. So there we go. I'm going to grab my scissors and I'm going to trim it down at the line, silver marking, where I marked it in silver marking pen. And there we go. I'm just going to take some paper towel and a little bit of isopropyl alcohol, mouthful, and I'm going to take off all of the silver marking pen that usually gets all over everything. I know that Mora faux leather generally is fine with me using isopropyl alcohol on it. But if you haven't tried yours before, you might want to test it on a scrap piece before taking it to your project. All right. If you are going to put foam in the back panel, now is the time to add it, baste it into place around the back panel. Moving on to the interior slip pocket. I have my slip pocket here, as I mentioned in the pieces segment. I have not interfaced this. I don't think I need it. So I've folded it in half, and this is the side I want showing. So I'm going to I've got one of my lining panels as well, just going to set that aside. I'm going to take this piece, and along the folded edge, I am going to top stitch. So I've got it on a 5-stitch length, and I'll back stitch at the beginning and the end of the seam. Right, now I'm going to take my other panel, one of my lining panels. I'm going to find the center of the bottom and try and find the center of the pocket. And then I am going to put my lining panel is right side up and my pocket is right side up over top, like matching up the center marks. Gonna have a look from the other side, and actually I'm gonna stitch from this side just to make sure I've got everything. Gonna put a couple clips in the bottom here just to hold it. And I'm going to baste along this edge. So I've got it upside down. I was looking at it to make sure everything was even. Now I'm just going to baste around this part. 5-stitch length, back stitching at the beginning and the end of the seam. Now I'm going to trim off the excess on both sides. Now we're going to add the lining panel with the slip pocket to the back panel, exterior panel. So I've got my back exterior panel. I'm going to put it face down, and then I'm going to place the other panel, the lining panel, right side up on top, and I'm just going to clip it around, all the way around, matching up the edges. All right, so I have all the clips on. I'm going to flip this over, and I'm going to baste around all of the outside edges to baste these two together. Ran out of bobbin. All right, bobbin's been replaced. All right, we can set this aside for now. Moving on to the strap, I've got my 2 sling strap pieces, and I have my webbing. As I mentioned before, mine's a 1-inch webbing, but this piece should work for 1 or 1.5. So I'm just going to take one of my pieces, and I'm going to find the center. I have drawn a line on my webbing, how much I need it to protrude on the end. The instructions tell you how much. And I'm going to try and center this piece along that line on the small side of this strap piece. So I'm going to clip it into place. I think I've got it centered. So now I'm going to baste it into place. All right, once you have that added, grab your other piece and lie it right sides together, matching the edges, and clip. So now we're going to stitch around this. I'm putting it on a 3.5 stitch length, and we are going to stitch it around with the seam allowance given in this step, not the full seam allowance, just the one given in this step. Back stitching at the beginning and the end of the seam. And now when I come across here, I'm going to reinforce a couple times. Now we're going to trim the corners, and I'm not trimming my webbing, just making these corners a little more narrow. So I'm going to cut across. And now we're going to turn this strap piece right side out. So I'm just going to pull it from the open end and start turning it so that the right side is out. Get to a certain point, and then I can pull on the webbing. I'll poke out any of the edges. I usually have a screwdriver I can use to help push out the corners, but it's in the other room, so I'll use this. Try and get all your edges rolled out as nice as possible, and then I am going to put some clips in it to hold it. Now we're going to top stitch this. I'm putting it on a 5-stitch length, and I'm going to do 2 passes, one the regular 1/8 of an inch top stitch away, and then another one about 1/4 of an inch away from that. So I'm going to have 2 rows of top stitching. So 5-stitch length, back stitching beginning and the end of the seam. Now we're going to work on the strap anchors. So I have, as I mentioned, mine are a little bit wider than the pattern calls for. But I've marked down the center, and then I've put some double-sided tape on either side. I'm just going to remove the backing off of the double-sided tape and fold it right into the center line. Remove the paper backing off the other side and fold it into the center, butting it up against the other edge. Just like that. Go ahead and do the same thing with the other one. And now we're going to top stitch all the way around. So I like to top stitch from the right side. So I've got it, I've got it on a 5-stitch length. So I'll just leave it at that. Back stitching at the beginning and the end of the seam. Now we're going to work with our strap tabs, adding our hardware. So I've got triangle rings, you might have D-rings, and I want to put it so that the wrong side, which is the one with the split, is along the flat edge of either the D-ring or in this case triangle ring, and I want to slide it in like that. So I can hide my center seam like that. And I'm just going to put a clip in it. And now we're going to take our strap tabs and we are going to baste them across the bottom. Now we're going to be adding the strap and the strap tabs to the exterior back piece. So I have gone ahead and I've marked the center of the top, and I've also marked the spots using the pattern piece where our strap tabs go. So I'm going to put those aside for a second, and I'm going to grab my strap. I've also marked the center on that one, and I'm going to place it right side up, matching the center notches along this short top edge, and I'm going to clip it into place. Now I'm going to baste it. I've got it 5-stitch length. I'm going to baste it across with the usual basting seam allowance to keep this attached. All right, now I'm going to grab my strap anchors. In the pattern, we need to protrude, these need to protrude beyond, like past the side a certain amount. I have marked a line, and that's the line where I want to put the edge. So I want it sticking out about that much. I'm going to take my anchor and I'm going to place it down, matching, in this case, the right-hand side with the mark I put, and this line along the edge. And I'm going to take a clip and clip it into place. I'm going to double check that I've got everything. There we go. Put the other one on exactly the same way. And now I'm going to baste these in place. All right, we can set this aside for now. Now we're moving on to constructing the gusset. So in the pattern at the top, the cut list, it gives you one measurement for the zipper length, but at the beginning of this section, it tells you exactly how long this piece needs to be. So make sure you measure it properly, because this makes a difference. If you don't have the exact right amount of zipper, it can make the gusset either too big or too small. So I have cut mine back to be exactly what it's supposed to be. I've also got my zipper flange pieces. I'm going to put the lining aside for a minute, and I'm just going to work with the exterior pieces. So I'm going to take my zipper and come to this end, and I'm going to take one of my zipper flange exterior pieces, and I'm going to put it right side down with this long edge matching up with the edge of the zipper tape. So just like that. I'm going to put a clip in it, a couple clips in it, and then I'm going to do the same on the other side. Okay, so now I'm going to, got it on a 5-stitch length. I'm just going to baste this in place. Maybe I'll do it from this side. The zipper is a little more stable than the more faux leather, so I'm just going to do a little bit. Now I'm not going to baste the whole thing. I'm going to start part way down. I don't want to interfere with the end. So on the end of these pieces, there's a dot, and I don't want to get anywhere near the dots because that can interfere with how this sits after. So I'm about inch and a half away, and I'm just going to baste both sides on. So this basting is just me trying to make sure I get these pieces in set where I want them. The pattern has you placing these down at the exact same time and then stitching it all at once. I prefer to baste it just to make sure I've got it in place. So now I'm taking the lining pieces of the flange and I'm putting them basically right sides together with the exterior. So I'm matching up the edges. So put that one in and then put a couple clips along this edge. Now I'm going to change my stitch length to 3.5, and I am going to stitch as close as I can to getting the full seam allowance in. If you need to switch out to a different foot, a more narrow foot or a zipper foot, go ahead. I'm just going to do it with the foot I have on. So I'm going to try and get as close as I can to the full seam allowance, and I'm going to back stitch at the beginning and the end of the seam. So I'm getting close to where the dot is. And now I'm going to lift my presser foot and move the zipper out so that it basically goes in line with that edge. Like that. And then I'm going to sew straight off of this. I'm going to do the same for the other side. And now I'm going to take them and fold both exterior and lining away from the zipper teeth. And I'm going to put clips in it. All right, now I'm going to top stitch along the edge by the zipper and then baste the rest of it closed. Now we need to add the zipper gusset. So I've got my two pieces here. I'm just going to set the lining to the side. I'm going to put my exterior face up. I'm going to put my whole package face down and centered as possible. Clip, and just like the flanges, I'm going to be basting first and then stitching. Now I'm going to baste with the 5 stitch length. I'm going to grab the lining panel and I'm going to put it right sides together with the piece that we just added. Okay, I'm going to stitch this on, trying to get as close to the full seam allowance as possible. And I'm going to backstitch at the beginning and the end of the seam. And just like the other, I'm going to fold the exterior and lining away from the zipper. And I'm going to clip it, lining up all the edges. I'm even going to clip along the long edge. And now I am going to top stitch along this edge and baste around the other 3 sides. I've got it on a 5 stitch length. And as I go, I'm going to be pulling the zipper away from the edges. Before I move on, I'm going to grab one of my base pieces and I am going to see how much extra there is. So I wasn't able to get the full seam allowance in here, so my zipper is wider than expected. So I expect that I'm going to have to cut off some on this side. So I'm taking my base piece and I'm putting it down along this short edge, and you can see I've got quite a bit of overhang. I'm going to be trimming this off so that it's fairly even. But just to hold it, I'm matching up the corner of the flange and because it's easier to take it off this straight edge. So I'm just going to grab my silver marking pen just to mark, and I'm going to mark approximately how far over it is. I'm going to double check on the other side to see how much excess I have. Okay, and now I'm going to, while I still have the zipper sliders off, I'm going to take it to my cutting mat. So I'm going to go and cut this down now to be the right width to fit with the base. All right, I took off about 3/8 of an inch. Now it's time to add our zipper sliders. So I've cut my zipper tape from Zipper by the Yard, and when I cut it off, it was nice and flat and even. When I put my zipper sliders on, I want it to continue to be as nice and flat as it is right now. So this is a number 5 nylon coil zipper, and coils interlace. So they back and forth, that's how they lock together. So I want to make sure that I have them back interlacing the same way as they are right now, because I know that's going to keep it nice and flat. So in this case, I've got the right coil, left, and so on. So I want to make sure that I have it the same way after I've put my slider on. So I'm going to break apart the coils. I like to put my slider on the side that I want to be at the top. I don't think it matters, so I'll put it on that side and then slide the other side in. Right now you can see the slider is kind of wonky, so I'm going to back it off a bit and try and straighten it up. And then when I think I've got it straight, I'm going to push down on the butt end and move it forward. And I got it into place. So you can see I've got one coil on that side, one on the other side. You can also tell that I've got it because the nose of the slider is pointing right down the center of the teeth. And when we get closer to the teeth, there's not a bulge on one side more than the other. So that one's good. I'm going to put it in the center. This side's the same. They're not always, but this side is the same. So I've got the first coil is on the right. So I'm going to break it apart, and I'm going to, again, slide the zipper slider on. I'm going to just put it in, and I'm going to just push down and see what I get, just like that. And there you go. You can see that I've got two on the right, then one on the left. So it's not sitting properly. The nose is pointing off to the side, and you can see I have a bulge more on the top than I do in the bottom. So those are 3 spots you can see to say that whether it's on properly or not. So I'm just going to back it off, and then I'm going to try and just pull down this by 1. Sometimes it clicks, sometimes it doesn't. And then try again. Push it down, and there we go. I got it even this time. So I'm going to move them to the center, and our zipper sliders are on. Do not forget to put your sliders on at this point before we put on the base. Now I'm going to grab my base, my exterior base. I've got my lining over here, and I'm going to put it right sides together, so exterior to exterior, and I'm going to clip it into place. I'm going to stitch across it. I'm going to baste across it. It doesn't say in the instructions to baste at this point. I just like to make sure I keep everything in place. It actually gives me an extra seam in case one pops. And I'm just going to baste across this. And I will back stitch over the zipper. Now I'm going to take the lining base piece, and I'm going to put it right sides together with the inside of this package. Clip it into place. And now I'm going to sew it across with the full seam allowance for the pattern. So I'm putting it on a 3.5 stitch length, and I'll back stitch at the beginning and the end of the seam. Actually, I forgot to back stitch over the zippers, so I'm just going to come in a bit and stitch over the back and forth over the zipper a bit. So I just came in a little bit from that stitch line and stitched. Now we're going to push our exterior and lining away from the zipper panel, and I'm going to pull them out nice and taut, try and keep them even. I'm going to put it on a 5-stitch length because we are going to top stitch this right here, this seam that we just sewed. Now we've got our exterior face up, so I'm going to join the other short sides, exterior to exterior, right sides together. I'm going to put a couple clips in it, and I'm going to baste this in place. I'm going to grab the lining panel and I'm going to bring it over so that I have right sides to right side of the lining fabric, and I'm going to clip it into place. So this, see if the other side shows it better. This is what we should have. The exteriors are together and the linings are together, and the inside is kind of curled up like that. So I'm going to sew this together with the full seam allowance, 3.5 stitch length. And this time I remembered to go over my zipper, so I don't need to do that. I'm going to take the lining and the exterior and I'm going to fold it back away from the seam we just sewed. And I'm going to make everything out into a ring. Going to pull it tight, fairly tight, out nicely anyways. And I'm going to top stitch the seam we just sewed. There we go. I'm just going to grab my scissors and I'm just going to trim this back a little bit so it's even. See if I need to. No, that's pretty good. So now I'm going to start here and I'm going to baste these pieces together. I've got my Mora because it's stretchier. I've got it down on my feed dogs, and I'm just stitching from the inside, but whatever. I find this way then I generally don't end up with puckers. So if you didn't have to, on this side, I'm going to do both sides. So I'll do this one and then I'll do this one. If you didn't have to cut off your stitches, your basting stitches, you might be fine. I usually end up cutting them off, so I need to stitch it again. Now we're moving on to the final construction. So I've got my front panel and I've added my Ashtown Creations cork label. So if you want your tag on the front, now would probably be the time to add it. I have my lining panel that doesn't have the pocket on it. Set that aside for a second. And I have my gusset that we just finished. So I'm going to turn my gusset. I have marked the center on both sides. I have used heat erasing pen on this side, and I've snipped into the other ones. I don't snip into my zipper. So I'm just going to turn it so that it's inside out. I'm going to grab some clips, and I'm going to take the top and I'm going to put it matching the center marks. I'm going to put a clip in it and clip out to either side. I'm going to take the bottom and do the same thing. Oh, before I forget, I've also marked where the gusset needs to hit. It's hard to see on this side, but there are marks on the pattern piece that suggest where the gusset should hit the seam. So I've marked those on my pattern piece, or on my piece already. So now I'm going to match up the bottom in the center and clip out to either side. Before I move on, I'm just going to quickly take this over to the machine and I'm just going to stitch along these two short edges. You don't need to see me do it. I'm basting right now, so I'm going to baste everything on. When I put this on, I will end up sewing it. So right now I'm just going to baste the top and the bottom. All right, I've got those two basted on, the top and the bottom. Now I'm going to open my zipper a bit. Open my zipper, I'm opening it all the way. I'm going to try putting my gusset seam where it's marked, but I may end up moving it. I usually do end up moving it. I'm wanting to make sure that the zipper fits all the way around up here. I don't want to be snipping into my zipper. So I usually try and make sure that this fits up here because I can snip into the seam down here to spread it out. So if I have to move this, I will. And I usually end up stitching these on in sections. So I may do up to where the flange joins. I may stitch that, and then I may stitch the down to here and then around the bottom. It just really depends on how it's sitting for me as to how much how many sections I do. So I really want the zipper to fit around nicely. And I'm probably going to end up stitching it in sections with the zipper because it's not wanting even with the clips. I'm just going to get some stronger clips. All right, I just got these clips, so I'll see if they are any stronger than the ones I've got. They look like that. So I'm just going to switch out these clips. So I usually end up with this flange hanging out a bit and I just trim it off. So if it doesn't match up perfectly for you, I have found that it can hang over a little bit like that and it still works out fine. Now, this is my first time making this size of the Jack Sling pack. I'm basing this on the medium size that I've already made of the Jack Sling pack, and it goes together just like the Louis waist pack, and I've made both medium and smalls in those. So when I say it usually does this, it's because I'm basing it on mostly the Louis waist pack, but also the medium Jack Sling pack. All right, I'm going to stitch these on what I've got clipped. I'm going to stitch them on before I go and snip around here to try and fit this. So I'm going to move us over to the machine and we will baste this on. All right, so I'm just going to put my needle down. I've got it on the 5 base and I'm doing the basting. I'm going to put it down where I ended before or just back from it. And I'm going to back stitch. And then I'm going to slowly come around this curve. I'm going to use either stiletto or a screwdriver or something to try and get around this. And I'm just stopping before I get to where this, because it is sliding off. So yeah, I got it. I'm going to trim that off after, but I'll go to the other side and stitch it first. So this time I'm going to start right here, because I don't want to start down there and try and come up. So I'm just going to start here and do it and then come back, flip it over, come back and do that. So now I'm going to take my scissors and I am going to snip into the seam, and I'm only doing about 1/8 of an inch deep in, like up to my basting stitches, maybe a little tiny bit beyond, and every 1/4-ish inch around, because I want this to spread out over this curve. And I don't want to go in too far because I don't want to go in further than the seam allowance. Now, I can't usually get the full seam allowance on this, so I do a little less than the full seam allowance when I come around this corner. On the second round when I'm adding the other piece, I always seem to struggle to get the full seam allowance on this, but as long as you keep it consistent, you should be fine. So I'm just putting these heavier duty clips in, and now I'm going to do the same on the other side. All right, now I'm going to stitch up these 2 sections. Okay, so I missed a bit there, so I'm just going to put my needle down here and join it up with here. All right, so now I'm just going to trim off these side pieces, and I'm going to move around, do the rest of it over at the table. So yeah, I'm going to just finish trimming off around these edges. Okay, so now I've got my lining panel. So we want to put the lining panel right sides together with the front exterior and the zipper. So I'm usually try and tuck this in somehow because we want it all tucked in, and I want it to lie fairly flat, and I really don't want any puckers in the corner, so I'm going to end up manipulating it as we go around. But to start off with, this should be good. So I'm going to take my lining panel piece and put it right sides together with the package we have, and I'm just going to line up I'm going to use the stronger clips. I'm going to line up the center marks. And I'm going to try and clip it all the way around, moving the zipper out of the way because I can feel it, so I need to push it out of the way. And again, I'm going to do this in sections. So I'm going to stop there, and I'm going to go over to the machine, and I'm going to sew it with the full seam allowance all the way around. Then I'm going to clip this, leaving a hole. So in the bottom here, we need a turning hole for this. So I'm going to, I'll mark it on both sides. So I'm just going to come to about here and here. We need to be able to turn this whole thing. So we want to stay as far away from the edges, like at the corners, that we can without going too far that we have no room to turn. So I'm going to mark on this side too. So there we go. So it doesn't matter what side's up, I've got them marked on both sides. So that's where I'm going to want to, when I clip it, and I'll clip in between, but I'm not going to sew in between there. So I'm going to move us around to the machine and get this part sewn on. So I need to try and get as close as I can to the full seam allowance, but I don't usually end up getting the full seam allowance around the zipper. It's the same when I was adding the zipper to the gusset, piece. I get about the same distance away on this. It works out, but I'm not getting the full seam allowance. So anyways, I'm just going to put it under my needle. I got it on a 3.5 stitch length. I'm starting down, like the zipper starts up further. I'm starting down from the zipper and working my way on it. So I'm going to back stitch at the beginning and the end of the seam. And as I go around, I'm going to be moving things. So there's where the zipper starts. So I'm going to probably start around in here, putting my flat screwdriver in and pushing the zipper out of the way because I do not want to feel it bulking under, or you end up getting pinches in your zipper and it doesn't look good. So I'm just going to go around and do this section, and then we'll add clips for the rest of it. I'm just going to check before I do the rest of it. I'm going to check to make sure I haven't pinched the zipper at all. So, no, it looks pretty good. That looks pretty good. And I've stitched over these so you don't see the raw edge. So yep, that's pretty good. I'm just gonna flip it back. So I'm not sure if that's gonna hold or not. I'm gonna bring this down and match up the center at the bottom. So I'm going to start where I left off here and stitch it down and then turn and come off here. And then I'll do the other side. And now I'm probably going to be working with my screwdriver again to flatten out these corners best I possibly can, because I really don't want them, I don't want a pucker in the bottom. Do the other side. I'm going to start, no, I'm going to start back up here again. All right, now I'm going to trim just these bottom corners. So I'm going to just cut in. I'm not going to cut my stitches and cut around. You can use pinking shears if you want. I don't want to cut my zipper tape, so I can only go up as far as where my zipper starts. I think I'm probably getting close to, I don't want to go any further than that, and then I'll start from there, approximately there, and work down. The only other thing I might do is pull the lining fabric away, and then get my duckbill scissors, and I'm going to trim some of this excess away. I'm only trimming the lining fabric. I am not trimming my zipper tape, mostly for the corners. Good enough. All right, so now I'm going to try and pull this through. So I'm going to put my fingers in and remove any clips I can find and start pulling the gusset out. Get my thumb into the top, push it in towards my thumb. All right, I got that turned. I'm going to take it over to my iron and I'm going to press this. Be careful if you're using vinyl or faux leather, use a pressing cloth so you don't melt your vinyl or leather. Give it a really good press, pulling the zipper, pulling the seams out. And then the bottom part here is open. That's where we just turned it through. We're going to end up folding this over to close up this hole. So while you're in there, iron your seam allowance for this up towards your main exterior, and then fold this down. And I'm going to put some glue in it, but I'll come back and I'll put the glue in it while I'm here. I'm just going to iron it so that it's ready to glue when I get back. So everything is going to be pulled out and ironed, and hopefully ironed nicely. So I'm going to go to my iron and do that, and then we'll come back. All right, so I couldn't get the gluing part on camera, but I've done it already. I use Fabri-Tac, or you can use like a 3-in-1 glue. I find that's all I've ever used. I don't know if anything else works, but you might be able to. If you can sew through double-sided tape, you might be able to even do that. So I pressed out my outside, made sure this was nice, folded over on the inside here, and then I put some glue under it. So I'm going to let it sit up for just a couple minutes, and then we'll go around to the machine, and I'm going to flip this thing so that this is down, and then I'm going to top stitch around here. But I'm just going to let it sit up, and when we come back, I will top stitch. All right, so this is where I've glued it. It's not perfect, but it will be completely closed once we top stitch. So I've turned mine inside out. I'm just going to open this a bit, and I'm going to put my needle down. Hopefully you can see it when I'm doing it, but if not, I'm putting it down somewhere in here, and I'm just top stitching, and I'll go all the way around and end up back here. So it gets a little hard around the corners to see. Even for me without recording, it does get a little difficult to see when we're in here. I've got it on a 5-stitch length, and I'm trying to go right as close to the edge as possible. And I will backstitch at the beginning and the end of the seam. To help shape this a bit, I take these pliers. I think they're glass breaking pliers. I have a link in the description box of all my videos, of all my tools, and this should be there. So I use these. I just find a spot that's a little bit bulky, and I squeeze it hard with this, and it ends up giving it a nicer edge. You can go all the way around with it. I start off with the tough spots and then move my way around. You can do this after too. I just, while I'm here, figured I would squish it a bit while I'm here. So then we're going to move on to the next part, and actually I'm putting it back right side, inside out. And we're going to be adding the back. So as you saw, this part that we just added was a turned. This part is going to be bound. I forgot when I was doing my going through the pieces that I needed fold over elastic. I've got the fold over elastic ready to go. It's close enough. So I'm going to take the back panel. So now I'm going to take the back panel and I'm going to put it right sides together with the front and the gusset. So I'm going to match up my notches. I've got my, I'm not sure which clips I need. I'll use these ones. So I'm going to do the same as I did before. I'm going to put some of these across the top. Make sure your hardware's in, and then across the bottom. I'm just going to go off camera again, and I'm going to baste these right now. I'm going to baste them. And then when we come back, we'll do the rest of it. Okay, I've got those on. So now I'm going to put the rest on. I have marked, using the pattern, I have marked where the gusset is supposed to go. But as you saw on the before, on the front part, it doesn't always matter. So I'm going to match up where the edge of the gusset seam is with the mark, and I'm putting clips in it. I'll do that on either side. And then I'm going to flip it over and grab my scissors, and around this part I'm going to snip in again about the 1/8 of an inch every 1/4 inch. Spread out the edges and clip. I'm going to go up to the top and I'm going to snip on this side too. All right, now I'm going to take this to the machine and sew around. I'm still doing the basting stitch, so I've got it on a 5-stitch length. I'm just opening up my zipper here. So I'm going to sew with my gusset side up, and I'm going to put it down where close to where I ended. And I'm going to backstitch beginning and the end of the seam. I may have to stop and start, depends on how well it goes. I will be using my stiletto to help me get around it. And I'm going to backstitch over the side tabs. All right, I've got it all sewn on. I've gone around and I've trimmed up some of the edges. It's not perfect, but I think it should be good enough for the fold over elastic. I've trimmed off the strap anchors on the side. So now we want to add our fold over elastic or binding or whatever you're using. I like fold over elastic. I think it gives me a nice finish. It's a little more forgiving, although I do use glue to help hold it into place, and I seem to have had good luck with that. So just going to put a little bit of glue across the end, and I'm folding over this end so that it doesn't fray on me. And I'm going to start clipping. Grab my clips. I'm going to start clipping. I'm going to start at the bottom, and I'm just going to, the fold over elastic has like a seam running down the center, and I'm going to try my best to keep that seam in the center of this seam. and then I'm going to clip it. I'm going to pull it taut a little bit and clip it in a couple more spots, and then around the corner just a bit, adjusting as I go. So I'm going to keep going around, and when I get to the end, I will trim off the however much I need, and then I'll fold it back on itself, and then we'll go around and glue it. So I'm just going to do this on fast forward. Okay, before I start bringing this over, I'm going to go along and start gluing it. So I'm just going to lift up this end and put a little glue along the edge. And I'm going to take this and put it down over top. Trying to get it back as centered as possible. And I'm going to put a clip in it. Going to remove a few more clips. Going to move this away from the edge. And I'm going to put some glue down. And I'm going to spread out the fold over elastic. I'm going to continue this all the way around. Even down here, I'm going to go over it as far as I can and then stretch this out and overlap the ends. So I'm just going to fast forward again through that because I don't need to explain the whole thing all over again. Okay, I've got it all glued on. Now I'm going to let it sit up for a few minutes, and then when we come back, we'll be stitching it on. Okay, it's probably had time to set up a bit, so now I'm going to stitch it on. I'm going to start at the top. I don't like starting where we overlap on the bottom. I'd rather start and stop on the top. I have it on a 3-stitch length, and I'm going to try and just run my edge of my presser foot along the edge. I also have my screwdriver to help me go around pressing things in, keeping things in line while I go around. All right, here we go, needle down, and I'm going to backstitch at the beginning and the end of the seam. All right, now I'm going to have a look, and it looks like I caught everything on the back side. I caught everything on the front side. All right, it's time to move on. The binding is all on. It looks good, so I'm just going to turn this right side out. So I'm sticking my hand in. I got to manipulate the corners, making sure that the binding, the bound edge make it look nice. So I may have to grab my pliers again and squish things down in corners like that, spots like this. I'll probably go around the whole thing using those and pushing things out, work on it, but I can do that after. This is the back, this is the webbing. Now it's time to put on our hardware on our strap. So as I mentioned, I've got the 1 inch. I had the wrong one earlier, so I grabbed the right one. I had a 3/4 inch. I needed 1 inch, so I've swapped it out. So if you notice it looks a little different, it is. So I've got my strap here, and I'm just trying to this. So okay, this is the top, and I'm just going to slide the top through my fingers. I'm going to take my slider, and I'm going to go up one side of the center bar and down the other, so that it's sitting on top. I want my slider to be sitting on the outside, the top side of my strap. So there we've got the strap. This is the top side. So I'm going down to the end. I'm going to grab my swivel hook, and I want to put, in this case, my swivel hook facing up towards the top side. So I have the wrong side of my webbing is on the flat side of the slider, and I'm just going to pull it through. I'm going to double check that that is on the top and that is on the top. Just going to turn it sideways, see if I can turn it sideways. It wants to fall over. All right, so I've got it sideways. So this is the wrong side of my strap. So I've got my swivel hook on and my slide adjuster. I'm going to push some fabric up through the slide adjuster. Make sure I've got the wrong side going up the left side, and then back down the right side of the slide adjuster. I'm going to fold the webbing back on itself a bit and move it back closer to the center bar. And I am going to put a clip in it. I'm going to go over to the machine, and I'm going to do 2 stitches. I will do one right at the edge and one a little bit in. If you want to do a box, you can go ahead and do a box. I'm just going to do this off camera, and then when we come back, we can finish up. And there we go. I've got the 2 lines of stitching on, so I'm just going to move the slider all the way up. Make sure it's not twisted. There we go, all good. And I'm just going to clip it on one side. The reason there's 2 clips is so that you can wear it either left or right side. So this is the Jack Sling pack. This is the small version. The small, the medium, and the mini are all put together exactly the same way. They actually nest. If I didn't show you before, they nest within each other. I think this is a really cute size. I haven't made the mini yet. I will have them all made by the time I record the intro. I love the way it came together. I love the way Tara designs her bags. I hope you enjoyed this tutorial. If you did, please consider giving it a thumbs up. If you haven't subscribed to my channel yet, please consider subscribing. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you in the next tutorial.